What's up guys, CT Kidney here, and today we are going to rock a Shadow Priest guide for phase 1 of Season of Discovery. So Shadow recently got buffed and the boss resist for the raid has heavily gone down, so that means we can actually play the game. And this is going to be a guide that's going to give you every single tool you need, including runes, talents, gear, both pre-raid and actual best in slot, consumables, and rotation. So the first thing we're going to do is discuss the runes, which are going to be the biggest impact on your character. So for our chest slot, we're going to want Twisted Faith and Void Plague, and we're going to swap between these two depending on the fight. The reason that we are going to be taking Void Plague most of the time is because it just does more damage, and also Twisted Faith, you need to cast Mind Flay, and Mind Flay is going to run you out of mana pretty quickly. We do still have a lot of mana issues, so that's why we're going to be taking Void Plague most of the time. So Void Plague is a dot that you're going to put on that needs to be refreshed every 18 seconds. You will only take Twisted Faith for Baron Aquanis because he's an elemental and he's immune to disease, aka immune to Void Plague, and also immune to Devouring Plague if you're an undead. For the glove slot, you're going to take Homunculi as it's the only single target option for the gloves. You could make a case for Share the Pain on Akumai, but honestly, it's not really that big of a deal. For the legs, you're going to want to take Penance, Shadow Word Death, or Mind Seer. If the boss has a shadow resist, you'll want to swap to Penance since it doesn't do shadow damage. This includes Galahast, Kelris, and Akumai. Although for Akumai, you're going to want to take Mind Seer because of the ads that will spawn. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the talent. So you're going to want to go 5 out of 5 into Spirit Tap, 2 out of 2 Empowered Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Focus 3 out of 5, and Mind Flay, and then you'll take 5 out of 5 Wand Specialization. So we take Wand Specialization because it's actually going to be our filler spell instead of Mind Flay. We take Mind Flay because, like I said, on Baron Aquanis, we can't take Void Plague, so we will have to take Twisted Faith. Alright, as far as your pre-raid best in slot gear goes, you're going to want Shadow Goggles for 120 Engineering, Spectral Necklace of the Owl or of Intellect, you can find this on the auction house, Invoker's Mantle, this is a tailoring piece, or you could get it from the auction house. It's going to give you Intellect and spell damage. A max level Shadow Wrath Cape, Robes of Arugal from Shadowfang Keep, a max level Shadow Wrath Bracers, Staff of the Shade or Witching Staff. Either one of these is totally fine. You can get them from the auction house. They will run you a pretty penny, however. Hands of Darkness are a tailoring piece that's going to give you 5 spirit and 9 shadow spell damage. Invoker's Cord is going to be your best in slot belt. It's going to give you 5 intellect and 7 spell damage. Silver Thread Pants are going to be your pre-raid best in slot pants. They're going to give you intellect, spirit, and stamina. Spider Soak Boots are going to be your best in slot boots before the raid. They're going to give you 7 spirit, 4 int, and 4 stam. You can get this from tailoring. Advisor's Ring is going to be your best in slot ring for the phase. It's going to give you 2 stamina, 2 MP5, and also Deep Fathom Ring is going to be your other best ring. It's going to drop from the last boss in Wailing Caverns. Rune of Perfection is going to be your best trinket before the raid. It's going to give you 10 spell pen, 5 shadow spell damage, or just 5 spell damage in general. And how you get this is you do your Warsong Gulch rep farm. So you can do the Ashenvale PvP event a couple of times and pick this up at Honored, which is going to be useful for the bosses that have spell resist. Minor Recombobulator is just an engineering trinket that's going to give you a little bit of mana back. Basically, it's just a mana potion. Cookie Stirring Rod is the item that I would recommend to get the most because Wanding is our filler spell. We will not be using Mind Flay except for Baron Aquanis. Wanding is actually our filler spell. So you're going to want to get this from Cookie as soon as possible in Wailing Caverns. Or in Dead Mines. Alright, now onto the best in slot. Twilight Invoker's Shawl is going to drop from multiple bosses inside the raid. Black Shroud Choker is going to drop from Galahast. Invoker's Mantle is still your best in slot, so we got lucky there. We get to keep our pre-raid. Shadow Wrath Cape, still best in slot. Invoker's Robes, or Twilight Invoker's Robes, are going to drop from multiple bosses in the raid as well. Note, you only need the 2 set for the spell damage bonus, and we don't much care about the 1% chance to hit with the spells. Durable Bracers of Shadow Wrath or any max level Shadow Wrath Bracers are still going to be our best in slot. Rod of the Ancient Sleepwalker is going to be best in slot for literally every caster and healer in the game. So I would plan on not getting this unless you're super lucky with rolls. But honestly, if you see it drop, roll on it, you might win it, who knows. Hand wraps of Befouled Water are going to drop from Baron Aquinas. Invoker's Cord is another tailoring piece that you can get off the auction house or make yourself. Soul Leech Pants are going to drop from Akumai, and they're going to give a lot of spirit, stamina, and intellect, as well as spell power. Extra Planar Spider Silk Boots are going to be a process to get. You're going to need to get something called the Elixir of Coalesced Regret. Go to the northwest part of Ashenvale, next to the Zoram Strand. You're going to find like a little Colosseum place there, and you're going to see a dead body called Dead Twilight Cultist. You're going to talk to it. It's going to tell you to go to talk to Old Seracus in the raid. That's the half-eaten Thresher behind Gamera. You're then going to go to Ratchet and talk to a Night Elf at the inn in Ratchet. That Night Elf is going to give you a quest to acquire some things. You're going to go get those things, turn those things in. She'll give you a trinket. That trinket will allow you to go underneath the boss room of Twilight Lord Kelris. You'll find a chest there. You will open the chest. You'll get a crystal. This crystal will tell you to go to a place where the light is strong. You're going to go to Ravenholt Manor in Alterac Mountains, and you're going to go follow a path behind the manor that's going to take you to a large light crystal sticking up out of the ground. You will use the crystal there. It will summon a shadow form looking night elf, and you are going to talk to it. Make sure when you're talking to it, you say you want them to show you whatever the hell it is they're going to show you. And then they'll give you the recipe for extra planar spider silk boots. I know it's a lot. It makes no sense, but you know what? We got it. It's cool. Signet of the Twilight Lord is going to drop from Twilight Lord Kelris. It's going to give you 6 spirit and some spell damage. Advisor's Ring, still your best in slot. Invoker's Void Pearl is going to be the item that drops from Akumai. That's going to give you a quest. You go turn it into Thunderbluff. It's what gives the world buff. So if you want to give anybody in your guild the world buff, you can go right ahead. Next up is Rune of Perfection, which you should already have. Again, you are going to get it from the Ashenvale rep, the Warsong rep that you grinded for Advisor's Ring. And then Inscribed Gravestone Scepter is going to be your quest reward for Black Fathom Villainy, which is going to be the quest you get in the raid from the Stealth Night Elf in the Enclave right next to Galahest's room. And that's going to be all the gear you need to worry about. Now for consumables, you're going to want to bring quite a few. First and foremost, you will need to get the Black Fathom Weapon Oil made by enchanters, or you can get it off the auction house. It's going to give a massive amount of MP5 and 2% spell hit. You will also want to use Smoked Sagefish, which is going to give you a 15-minute buff that gives you a little bit of MP5. But, you know, adding them both up together is a good amount, and it really makes sure that you don't really go out of mana at all. One thing you'll absolutely need is plenty. I usually bring 30 or 35 of lesser mana potions. You'll want to make sure you have these stocked up, because lesser mana potions are going to be your best friend. And lastly, you'll want to pick up something called a Chronoboon Displacer from the reagent vendor. Any reagent vendor anywhere in the world will have these, and what it's going to do is it's going to store any world buffs that you have, and then you can release it when you get to the raid. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to buy one of these, go to Thunderbluff, wait around for like probably 5 or 10 minutes. People are turning this quest all the time. Get the Black Fathom Boon get the Black Fathom Boon buff, and then you're going to want to use this item to store it, and then you'll use the item again when it's time to raid to release it, and it's going to give you a good amount of spell hit, a good amount of spell damage, and I mean that's pretty much it. But it's a really good important thing to have. That buff makes everything so much easier. As for your rotation, every boss is going to be single target except for Akumai. However, there are some nuances. The first boss, Baron Aquinas, as I've already mentioned, is immune to diseases, so you will not take Void Plague. You will want to swap for Twisted Faith because it will be usable on this fight, and Void Plague will not. This is why we take Mind Flay in our talents, by the way, instead of the extra point in Shadow Focus for the more hit, because we want to be able to use Mind Flay for Baron Aquanus when we actually have to use it instead, because we can't use Void Plague. Also, there are some bosses that I mentioned that are going to be resistant to shadow damage. This is going to be Galahast, Twilight Lord Kelris, and Akumai. For those fights, you'll want to swap out of Shadow Word Death and take Penance, because Penance does not do shadow damage. Also, for Akumai, you'll want to take Mind Seer because he summons a good amount of adds and you can Mind Seer them down, which really helps out. It is going to eat your mana, so make sure you do have those mana potions and those mana per 5 things going. Alright, as for your rotation, it's going to be pretty simple. So at the start, you are going to want to hit yourself with a Power Word Shield on the pre-pull, and then drink to full mana. This is because you're going to be using Shadow Word Death, and you want to make it as easy on your healers as possible, because that thing is going to chunk you. So first up is going to be Homunculi, and then you're going to use Void Plague because it'll do the most damage, and then you'll hit either Penance or Shadow Word Death, whichever one you have. You'll use Shadow Word Pain, and then if you're an undead, you'll hit Devouring Plague. After that, you'll do Mind Blast, and then you will fill with Wand or Mind Flay, depending on the fight. You'll want to make sure to refresh your dots immediately after they fall off. You're not going to be refreshing them when they're still on, because you'll lose a tick, and that's just going to be a loss of damage. You'll want to use Shadow Word Death, Penance, and Mind Blast, and Homunculi on cooldown. Now, one thing you need to mention with Homunculi is that you don't want to have it already on cooldown before the start of the fight, because Homunculi's AI is really bad, and you have to use Homunculi on the target that you want them to hit. Otherwise, they just won't hit it. Sometimes it's really stupid. I don't know why the AI is that bad, but it is. Also, you'll want to use your lesser mana potion as soon as you've used your first cycle of abilities. So as soon as you've used your Mind Blast on your first rotation, you're going to hit your lesser mana potion, and that's going to be your rotation pretty much. Alrighty guys, and that's everything you guys are going to need to know learning how to play Shadow Priest for this phase. I will of course be making another guide for next phase whenever that happens. And unfortunately, no Morgana is going to be the raid, meaning there's going to be a lot of mechanical enemies, so we probably won't be using Void Plague much, but yeah, I'll get to that when I get to it. Sorry this guide took so long to make. I had it in the work for a long time. However, every single time I would make a point in the video, they would introduce a new piece of gear, or we'd get a buff, or they'd do something to the raid bosses. So every time I tried to actually sit down and do this guide, they kept making more changes, which is a good thing. I'm not mad at that. I'm just saying it was kind of a pain to make the guide when Blizzard was constantly changing everything. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave it in the comments. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.